for opening remarks on House File 2064.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this bill ensures that someone convicted of child endangerment resulting in death receives a minimum sentence before eligibility for parole. And Mr. Speaker, there are amendments.
There are amendments. Clerk, call the first amendment.
H8010 by Judiciary Committee.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for opening remarks. Amendment H8010.
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to defer this amendment.
Gentleman from Lynn asks for unanimous consent to temporarily defer on Amendment H8010. Are there objections? Hearing none, so ordered. The clerk call up the next amendment.
H8047 by Reiser of Lynn.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for opening remarks. Amendment H8047.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this amendment imposes a 30% to 70% mandatory minimum sentence before eligibility for parole for a conviction of child endangerment resulting in death. It provides discretion to the judge above that 30% with some factors that should be considered. Additionally, applies the same 30 to 70% mandatory minimum for robbery 2, again with factors included. And Mr. Speaker, there are additional amendments.
Clerk call up the first amendment.
H8065 by Reiser of Lynn.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for opening remarks. Amendment H8065.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment clarifies that this minimum sentence for child endangerment will only apply in those cases where intentional unreasonable force, torture, or cruelty result in bodily injury or that is intended to cause serious injury that results in death.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for closing remarks. Amendment H8065. Gentleman from Lynn moves adoption of Amendment H8065. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have. The amendment is adopted. The clerk call up the next amendment.
H8073 by Wolf of Clinton.
Chair recognizes the lady from Clinton, Representative Wolf, for opening remarks. Amendment H8073.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This amendment, which does not become effective until July 1st of 2018, grants the Iowa Board of Parole limited and completely discretionary authority to grant parole to first-time, low-risk offenders serving a pre-July 1st, 26 sentence for second-degree robbery, but only once they have served at least 30% of their 10-year sentence. This amendment is consistent with evidence-based research that indicates lower-risk offenders are less likely to become high-risk offenders if they are given the opportunity to serve a longer period of supervised parole. However, the amendment creates no right to early parole consideration by this population of offenders, and it requires the Board of Parole to specifically consider an offender's prior criminal record and the impact of the offense on the victim of the crime when determining if and when an offender in this population will be offered parole consideration. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Is there discussion? The chair recognizes the gentleman from Boone, Representative Baltimore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'd like to thank Representative Wolf for bringing this amendment. It's something that we've thought about and worked on for quite a while. I think it's a good amendment to a good amendment to a good bill, and I would hope that the body would ultimately support the entire piece of legislation as amended. So I would encourage the body to support this amendment and everything else hereafter. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the lady from Blackhawk, Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I too stand in support of Representative Wolf's amendment. We know that low-risk offenders, when you talk about robbery in the second, I believe in prison right now, over 50% are those of African-American descent as well. And to me, this is a great step toward prison reform. So I really appreciate the amendment and ask everyone to support it. Thanks.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage my colleagues in the House to support this amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes the lady from Clinton, Representative Wolf, for closing remarks. Amendment H8073.
Thank you. I have voluminous thanks to offer to many people, but I will save those for the bill. I would move this amendment.
Lady from Clinton moves adoption of Amendment H8073. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is adopted. We're now back on Amendment H8047 as amended. Is there discussion? Chair recognizes the lady from Clinton, Representative Wolf.
Thank you. Hello again. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise in enthusiastic support of this bill as amended. While the proposed changes to Iowa Code 902.12 are relatively small, passage of this bill represents a historical willingness on the part of this body to enact substantive and meaningful criminal justice reform. Reform that is fiscally responsible and which will, over time, reduce recidivism in our state, making it a safer place for all of us to live and work and raise a family. I want to thank Representatives Reiser and Dawson for their willingness to support an arguably somewhat controversial amendment to their original bill and for their work on these amendments. I want to especially thank Representative Chip Baltimore, who has supported the concept of sentencing reform throughout session and who is the one who ultimately put together a reasonable and responsible proposal that I have no doubt will pass muster both in the Senate and with our governor. Finally, I want to thank the Iowa Public Safety Advisory Board for their leadership on this issue. The board is made up of representatives from Iowa's law enforcement agencies, from the Attorney General's office, from the County Attorneys Association, from the Department of Public Safety, from victim advocacy groups, and from just plain Iowa citizens. For the past 3 years, the Public Safety Advisory Board's annual reports to the General Assembly have included a recommendation that the mandatory minimum sentences for robbery 2 and robbery 1 be reduced to 30%. The Public Safety Advisory Board made these repeated recommendations based on research and reports compiled by Iowa's nonpartisan Juvenile Criminal Justice Advisory and Planning Committee, which suggests that for low-risk offenders, a shorter mandatory minimum coupled with a longer period of supervised parole will, over time, reduce recidivism in this population of offenders. Ladies and gentlemen, the proposal before us today does not, it's more restricted than what the Public Safety Advisory Board has repeatedly recommended, but it is a beginning. And I am proud to be a part of this beginning and proud of this body for supporting it. So I support the bill and would ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser. The gentleman from Lynn moves adoption of Amendment H8047. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have the ayes do have. The amendment is adopted. Clerk, call up the previous amendment that was deferred.
H8010 by Judiciary Committee.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for opening remarks. Amendment H8010 previously deferred.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to withdraw this amendment.
The gentleman from Lynn asks for unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment H8010. Are there objections? Hearing none, so ordered. The disposal of all amendments are now in House File 2064 as amended. Is there discussion? The chair recognizes the gentleman from Woodbury, Representative Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the Iowa House. It's my honor to stand in support of this bill. I wish to personally thank Representative Reiser for working with me in bringing this bill forward on behalf of constituents that we each had that dealt with the loss of a child in their family. Child endangerment resulting in death is a logical step to add to having a mandatory minimum. The crimes that are currently having mandatory minimums include murder in the second degree, attempted murder, sexual abuse in the second degree, kidnapping in the second degree, robbery in the first and second degree, and vehicular homicide under limited circumstances. Where a death has resulted as a result of intentional acts of a caretaker of a child, I believe that we should mandate that there be at least a minimum term in prison. I wish to thank Representative Baxter, who also served on the subcommittee on this bill, Representative Baltimore for moving forward with an expanded amendment, and Representative Wolf for her work on this bill as well. And I would encourage the body to support this bill. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Lynn, Representative Reiser, for closing remarks on House File 2064.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As amended, this bill adjusts sentencing for child endangerment and robbery 2 to better serve the cause of justice. On the one hand, it imposes new mandatory sentencing for those who beat a child to death so that these criminals are ineligible for parole until 15 years at the very earliest. On the other hand, it retains mandatory sentencing for the nonviolent crime of robbery in the second degree. In both cases, it allows the court to consider pertinent factors to impose harsher minimum sentence than the 30% minimum when necessary. This bill has been a team effort from the beginning. I wish I'd come up with the idea for the child endangerment piece, but the credit belongs to Representative Dawson. I thank him and Representative Baxter for working on this with me and the subcommittee and beyond. I'd also like to thank Leader Hagenow, Representative Baltimore, and Representative Wolf for their help. Finally, I want to thank the families of the victims, some of whom are watching right now. This bill won't bring your loved ones back, but it will ensure that those who beat children to death in the future will receive the punishment they deserve. Mr. Speaker, I move the bill.
The gentleman from Lynn moves the bill be read for the last time and placed on its passage. Are there objections? Chair hears none. The clerk will read.
House File 2064, a bill for an act relating to the criminal offense of child endangerment resulting in the death of a child or minor and providing penalties, being enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Iowa.
The question now is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor shall vote aye. Those opposed shall vote no. The clerk will open the machine and receive your vote. Meyer votes aye. Jones votes aye. Winkler votes aye. Dunkel votes aye. Bennett votes aye. Pritchard votes aye. Dul-Samad votes aye. Baltimore votes aye. Eisenhart votes aye. Have you all now voted? Clerk, close machine, record the vote. The House pay attention to results of the vote. Those voting aye 97, nay 0, absent not voting 3. The bill having received a constitutional majority is declared to pass the House. Are there objections to the title? The chair hears none, and the title is agreed to. The chair